In the middle of the scorching deserts of the Middle East exists a narrow stretch of water that keeps the modern world running. The Strait of Hormuz, so narrow that on a world map, it's practically just a thin slit between the United States and Iran. But every day, a massive portion of humanity's energy supply is forced to pass through this place. Oil, natural gas, strategic goods, all of it is funneled through an extremely fragile maritime corridor. If Hormuz stopped operating, the entire global economy could be shaken in a very short time. And that is why this place is called one of the most dangerous choke points on the planet. Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. It is the only exit route for most of the Middle East's oil. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, all depend on this route. Every day, tens of millions of barrels of oil pass through Hormuz. An enormous amount of energy flows through here, enough to power modern civilization. The oil tankers here are so massive that they are difficult to imagine, with some ships longer than several football fields combined. They move slowly through narrow waters beneath the brutal desert heat. Each vessel can carry millions of barrels of oil, with the cargo value of a single voyage reaching hundreds of millions of dollars. Hormuz is not as wide as many people think. In many sections, ships are only allowed to travel through extremely narrow shipping lanes. That makes every mistake dangerous: a collision, a grounded ship, a massive fire. Just one single incident could paralyze this entire transportation route. For oil tanker captains, passing through Hormuz has never been a simple job. From bridge decks, standing dozens of meters above the water, every movement must be calculated with precision. A fully loaded supertanker can weigh hundreds of thousands of tons, and at cruising speed, it requires an enormous distance to come to a complete stop. That makes navigation through the narrow strait extremely dangerous. Especially at night, convoys of ships move one after another through the pitch-black waters. Inside the control room, radar screens glow continuously. The AIS system displays the position of every surrounding vessel. Just one small miscalculation in distance could cause an accident. At Hormuz, an accident is not just a maritime issue, it could trigger a global energy crisis. The shipping corridors here are known as the traffic separation scheme. Ships must follow their designated lanes with near-perfect precision. One lane is for ships entering the Persian Gulf, one lane is for ships heading out toward the Indian Ocean. The distance between them is sometimes much smaller than people imagine, making Hormuz feel like a narrow highway for gigantic steel machines. During the day, everything appears calm, with desert sunlight reflecting off the hulls of gigantic oil tankers. The sea surface looks almost perfectly still. But beneath that calmness lies the enormous pressure that the modern world places on this route. Billions of dollars worth of energy pass through here every single day, and no one wants that flow to be interrupted. That is why military forces are constantly present around Hormuz. Warships patrol alongside commercial oil tankers. Reconnaissance aircraft continuously scan this strategic body of water. Drones monitor every movement from above. During periods of heightened tension, oil tankers sometimes have to broadcast warning signals continuously while crossing the strait. Some sailors describe Hormuz as steering a gigantic floating fuel depot through the most tense waters on Earth. But sometimes everything at Hormuz is only seconds away from disaster. At 2 a.m., a supertanker is moving through a narrow shipping corridor in near total darkness. On the bridge, only the cold blue glow from the radar screens remains. The night crew continuously monitors every signal moving around the ship. Radio transmissions break intermittently through the deep rumble of the engines. The distance between ships is now measured in mere seconds of reaction time. Suddenly, an unknown signal appears on the radar moving rapidly toward the tanker's route. Collision alarms immediately erupt throughout the control room. The officers simultaneously look toward the screens, and for a few brief seconds, no one knows whether it is a patrol vessel, a civilian ship, or another kind of threat. Beyond the glass windows lies only thick black darkness in the night waters of the Middle East. The massive ship begins to slow down, but with a weight of hundreds of thousands of tons. It cannot stop immediately. Every command now must be executed with absolute precision. Just a few seconds too late and the world's most strategic shipping route could turn into a gigantic inferno. Then finally the unknown signal changes direction, the warning alarms stop, and the bridge falls silent for a few seconds before everyone returns to work. No one truly relaxes because at Hormuz, every sailor understands one thing: a single small mistake in the darkness could force the entire world to pay the price. Ship collisions have happened in this region before. Explosions and fires at sea have already caused serious concern throughout the global oil transport industry. Just one small spark aboard an oil tanker can quickly turn into a massive catastrophe. Because every ship here carries an enormous amount of fuel. If Hormuz suffers a major disruption, the world would feel the consequences immediately. Oil prices could surge within hours, global transportation costs would begin to rise, commodity prices would follow, and international supply chains would come under pressure. A narrow stretch of water in the Middle East can impact every economy on the planet. Hormuz is not just a story about oil, it is also one of the most heavily militarized and tense regions in the world. North of the strait lies Iran, a country with an extremely important strategic position in the Middle East. For decades, Hormuz has continuously remained at the center of geopolitical confrontations. Warships patrol close to each other through the narrow waters, military aircraft fly above oil tankers, radar systems track every movement, and drones constantly monitor the area from the sky. Every nation clearly understands the importance of this place. Because whoever controls Hormuz can influence the global energy supply. That has turned this strait into one of the most strategically powerful locations on the planet. In modern history, Hormuz has repeatedly become the center of international crises. Oil tankers have been seized here before, and mysterious attacks have taken place directly along this shipping route. Explosions at sea have previously sent shockwaves through the global energy market. Every time tensions escalate, global oil prices react immediately because the world understands that Hormuz is too important to be disrupted. What is remarkable is that humanity still has not found a complete alternative to this place. There are oil pipelines that bypass Hormuz, but their capacity is not enough to replace the full volume of actual transport. Most of the world's oil is still forced to pass through this strait, and that makes Hormuz a strategic weak point of the global economy. During the day, Hormuz becomes a gigantic industrial world in the middle of the desert. Oil tankers move one after another under temperatures exceeding 110 degrees. The air shimmers from the extreme heat, and the massive steel hulls reflect the blinding white sunlight. At night, Hormuz transforms into a completely different world, with thousands of lights stretching across the dark sea, while oil tankers move slowly like gigantic floating cities. Night shift sailors continuously monitor the screens and the horizon, because at Hormuz no one is allowed to lose focus. What is fascinating is that the concept of a choke point has existed throughout thousands of years of history. Ancient empires once controlled narrow trade routes in order to dominate commerce. Strategic straits once determined the wealth of entire civilizations. Today, Hormuz plays a similar role, except that instead of sailing ships and camels, the modern world uses gigantic oil tankers and global logistics networks, but the principle of power remains the same. Whoever controls transportation routes will hold global influence, and Hormuz is the clearest example of that. Experts have raised a frightening question: what would happen if Hormuz were completely closed for several weeks? Some predictions suggest that oil prices could surge dramatically in a very short time. Many economies dependent on imported energy would face severe pressure. Global living costs could rise along with it. International transportation supply chains would begin falling into chaos. That shows just how deeply interconnected modern civilization has become. We have high-speed internet, satellites, and artificial intelligence, yet the entire world still depends on a few narrow sea routes on the map. Hormuz is one of the most important of those routes. The more globalized the world becomes, the more dangerous choke points become, because more and more countries depend on the same transportation system, and if that system fails, everything is affected. Hormuz clearly reflects the dark side of the modern economy, a system that is extremely efficient, yet also extremely fragile. The world's major powers understand this clearly, which is why they constantly monitor this region closely. Military bases continue to rise across the Middle East. Naval fleets continuously operate near Hormuz. Reconnaissance aircraft fly above the shipping lanes. No nation wants to lose access to this place, because losing Hormuz would mean the risk of a global-scale energy crisis. But amid all that tension, the oil tankers continue moving every single day. These gigantic ships silently transport energy for the entire world. Endless convoys of tankers pass through the scorching waters between the deserts, a flow that almost never stops. Perhaps the most frightening thing about Hormuz is not its size, but the fact that modern civilization is still placing its future in a narrow strip of water between the desert sands. In your opinion, what would happen if Hormuz were completely blocked for just 7 days? Skyrocketing fuel prices, a global transportation crisis, or a chain reaction far greater than we imagine? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. And if you want to explore more of the world's most dangerous choke points, don't forget to follow the next journey. Because beyond Hormuz, there are still many other small places silently controlling the global economy every single day.